All right. So welcome everyone to our menopause and strength training webinar. Um, Popular topic. I had a really good response and turnout to this. So I'm excited about that and hoping to give you guys some great information today that's actionable and hopefully motivating and just educational. So you guys have a better overall understanding. I think what's hard is as we go through life and in different stages of life, the knowledge of what we need changes and evolves. And so keeping on top of what's best at any point in our lives can be, can be a constant learning process. And I'm hoping to help make it simplified a little bit. What we're going to focus on talking about today, main things we're going to be focused really on strength training is kind of the theme of today. And we're going to be talking about what are the best strength exercises you should be prioritizing in perimenopause and beyond. Um, in addition to that, specifically what exercises help with bone density, because that's obviously a big concern for women as we get past menopause and our hormones start to change. So we want to make sure we're doing our best to take care of our bones. How does cardio play into our fitness routine? Now, technically that's not strength, but I want to bring that up because it's a very important part of our fitness. But the needs change as we start to age. So I really want to make sure we understand how that plays into our overall program. We're going to talk a little bit about what exercises to avoid once you've hit menopause and beyond. And then we're going to end with what I consider, well, not what I consider, but what science is now saying is the safest and most efficient way to gain strength for 45 plus women. But first, I want to step back a little bit and talk about what's happening during menopause that impacts our strength and our fitness. First of all, as we all know, when we go through menopause, our estrogen, all of our hormones change, but estrogen particularly takes a pretty steep dive during menopause. Men have a more gradual decline in their hormones. They still have the same decline in hormones, but it's gradual. For women, it's a steeper curve right in that midlife menopause stage. And that is what really impacts our muscle because it's not talked about a lot or super well known that estrogen is a key for us to maintain our strength. It is a hormone that helps our muscles fire more efficiently. And without it, or when we get a decrease in it, our muscles just can't fire the way they used to. So you may even notice that you start to feel less strong, or you start to feel like it's harder for you to do the same strength type of movements as you did before. And that's partly due to estrogen. So the downside of this is when we lose estrogen and we start to lose strength, we lose muscle mass. Our muscle mass plays a big role in our metabolism. The more muscle we have, the higher our metabolism is. So people can sometimes experience, body composition changes as we get older. We start maybe losing muscle and gaining body fat. And the approach to that is often I need to burn more calories, I need to do more cardio, but really the emphasis should be I need to regain my muscle mass. Our muscle mass is not just we think of muscle maybe as bodybuilders or someone that's really fit at the gym. But as we age, muscle is actually our organ of longevity. It keeps us durable. It keeps our metabolism up. It helps with insulin resistance because it gives somewhere glucose is stored in our muscle. So if we have less muscle, there's less places to put our glucose. So we start to get more insulin resistant as we get older. So muscle is really good for that. So there's a lot of amazing things that muscle does for our body besides just what we think of as our muscles make us look strong. So I want you to kind of start shifting your thought process a little bit today about why muscle is so important. When we're younger, and this is a little bit of a disservice in our cultures, for women, we always think, oh, we want to be thin, we want to be lean, we want to do cardio, we're counting our calories. But in actuality, there's this, we don't want to be bulky, it's like when you get older, would you rather be frail? That's kind of where it goes as we start getting older, right? And if we take change now, we can really change the way we think about aging and prevent that frailness that can come if we can lean into strength training. So getting away from the mindset of cardio and calories, because when we hit menopause, the approach to maintaining muscle is the exact opposite of how we approached cardio and calorie counting when we were younger. For a lot of people who have been active and fit during their life and they focused on cardio, they'll notice as they start getting a little older that what they used to do just isn't quite working the way it used to. And that's because it was easier for us to maintain muscle when we were younger. So we could do mostly cardio and still have good muscle and still have good metabolism. But as we get older and our muscle's harder to maintain, if we don't work at it, we'll lose that muscle. And then just continuing to do the cardio is not going to give us the same benefit it used to. So a little bit of a mindset shift today. So that's kind of where I want to start is that the first step is a mindset shift for a lot of women that strength training is not a bad thing, or bulking up is not really what we need to be worrying about. That's very hard to do, first of all. But secondly, that's having muscles a good thing. It keeps us independent, keeps us, especially as we're really getting into later years, that's what keeps us durable. That keeps us from breaking bones. That's what keeps us from being able to be independent and live a active lifestyle. So really leaning into muscle is a good thing, and we need to spend some focused attention on it as we age. So I kind of touched on how muscle is actually the organ of longevity. It's part of our endocrine system, and it helps with like I said, metabolism, insulin resistance. It's also helping to all of our endocrine, our thyroid or human growth hormone, all of our healthy hormones as we age will produce more of or maintain more of with muscle. So the things we need to prioritize to build muscle, we want to, or in perimenopause. So the first question, what should we do when we hit perimenopause? Build muscle, gain also absolute strength and power. So not just there, I'll talk about the different types of strength training, but not just focusing on different muscle groups, but actual physical strength of like how much weight can you lift safely or how much power can you exert. That's something that we lose as we get older. As there's two types of muscle fibers. Type 1 are the muscle fibers that are endurance based and use oxygen. Type 2 are our strong and power muscles. Type 2 are what we will quickly lose as we age. And so we want to do activities that promote type 2 muscle fibers. So power and absolute strength are really good for type 2 muscle fibers. We want to focus on building our bones. We want to focus on increasing our metabolism. And we also obviously want to maintain our cardiovascular health. Now, cardio training will help with our cardiovascular health, but strength training will help with all of those, including our cardiovascular health. So we're going to get a lot more bang for our buck from strength training. So if you're looking at what are the best specific strength exercises to do for perimenopause and beyond, I put it in two different buckets. There's sort of global strength or full body strength where we want to lift heavy. And I define heavy as, if we're talking about repetitions of weight, it's like something you can lift 5 to 8 times. Now, if you're a beginner to strength, you probably don't want to jump in and start right there. But that's something you want to work towards where you're challenging yourself. I would say most people, and most women in particular, when they lift weights, probably are going lighter and doing higher repetitions, which again is not really going to get to the baseline type muscle fibers and building that strength of our bones and our whole body. So going heavier is important, and full body strength. So that would be like deadlifts, squats, even push-ups and pulls. It doesn't have to be super complicated, but it's not our single joint exercises. The second type of strength training is hypertrophy or building specific. So think of a bodybuilder. They do hypertrophy training, which is focusing on every muscle. They want to focus on their bicep. They want to focus on their shoulder. They want to focus on their quads to make those muscles bigger. Well, we're not looking to be bodybuilders, but we still want to gain muscle in those particular muscle groups. So hypertrophy, you're looking to gain size in particular muscles. The hard part about hypertrophy is it can be time consuming. Because if you think about all the muscles, you don't really have time. How do I have time to work every muscle of my body? It's not very time efficient. So the one thing that I've started doing, and those who have followed me or maybe worked with me know this already, that I'm now incorporating BFR, blood flow restriction training, which I'll talk a little bit more about today, but in all of my workouts with my clients and with myself, because it's so much more efficient. instead of doing strength training for 45 minutes, you can get the same hypertrophy benefits in about a 15-minute workout. And it's because we're shifting our focus from mechanical loading, which is the way we've always thought of strength training, is how much weight we can lift, to metabolic. So we're looking at what signals are our muscles sending to our brain because it's building lactic acid. Our muscles are going into hypoxia. The mitochondria are reacting more. So BFR is a great tool to make strength training much more efficient. But there's basically full body strength and the hypertrophy, and we need to work on a little bit of both of those. Now, taking those concepts and going into what exercises are best to help with bone density, the good news here is they overlap. So it's not like we have to do a whole other thing. Bone density, the heavy lifting is great for. By heavy lifting, bone density, we look at hips and spine are kind of the main. I mean, obviously we want all our bones to be strong, but those are always the measuring points they take. One way to build bone in our spine, we want to load our axial skeleton. So what does that mean? That means we want farmer carries, which is just basically holding heavy weights in your hands and walking, is one of my favorite bone density exercises because it's not very high risk of injury, but you can load your axial skeleton. So you'd be holding heavy weights in your hand. It's loading your skeleton, it's loading your hips. And that load on your skeleton is what stimulates your bone to turn over and create more strength. That's one way to build bone density. The other way is dynamic exercise. That would be like running, jumping, something with an impact. So there's studies out there of tennis players. So you think of tennis and it's just hitting a ball in the racket with one hand. The forearm bone density of a tennis player, of their dominant arm, is double the bone density of their other arm. And it's just from that vibration and a little bit of impact with the ball on the tennis racket. So in the dynamic sense, it doesn't have to be a lot of load, but it needs to be that impulse where there's a moment where the muscles contract quickly and they tug on the bone. And that's what stimulates the bone to grow, is getting that moment of impact. So running is great, jumping, throwing medicine balls. They don't even have to be that heavy, but just something that's getting you that vibrational force. It's another great way to build bone. You won't get as much spinal benefit from that. You'll get hip, legs, or if you're throwing a medicine ball, arms, obviously with the tennis, it's your forearm. So wherever that impact is happening, whatever muscle groups are involved in contracting, that's where you'll get the benefit. If you want to get bone density in your spine, really that axial loading. So squats where you're holding a weight, but those, you have to really know what you're doing. So that's why I really just like the farmer carry. You're just holding weights as heavy as you can. The other great thing about that, will help with grip strength. Grip strength is it's just a measurement that kind of gives a lot of information about how strong you are overall, but grip strength is very, very tightly linked to our mortality. Like the lower your grip strength is, the higher your mortality is, because it's a proxy for how strong our overall body is. If our grip is really weak, we can't do that much with especially our upper body. If our grip is really strong, it's unlikely we're going to have a strong grip and be weak everywhere else, right? So, but training it through farmer carry and loading the spine is one of my favorite overall full body strength and bone density exercise. Another way to build bone density is vibration. So I talked about that with tennis. It's hard to get power plates. If you've heard of that, is a way to get vibration, because that vibration stimulates those muscle fibers against the bone. And again, any kind of quick movement of the muscle fibers on the bone is going to stimulate that bone growth. So vibration is another good way. And then the last way, again, with blood flow restriction training, lots of research on how much that helps bone density, because it increases bone markers in our blood, which tells our bones that we need to turn over. And there's lots of studies that show how much faster bones heal using BFR training. It also focuses on type 2 muscle fibers, and the type 2 muscle fibers that are better at helping our bones helping bone density than type 1. And that's just because our type 2 muscle fibers are stronger and more powerful, and they're going to put more force on the bones. So bone density is mainly about force on the bones, and then also having increased bone growth markers in our blood, like human growth hormone and other anabolic hormones that go throughout our whole system in our body. Those are important. So BFR can really help with that as well. So lifting heavy, if you're not familiar with lifting, I wouldn't start there, but that's something you want to work towards. But farmer's carries are something that I think just about anyone can start with. That helps to load the axial spine. And then how do you add anything dynamic into your program? And then BFR. Those would be my 3 kind of biggest tips for bone density. All right. Cardiovascular. We're going to switch gears to talk about how does that fit into our overall routine, and especially as we age. So as I talked about in my intro about, when we're younger, or at least societally, women are really encouraged to do cardio, and that's great. We want great cardiovascular health, but when we age, we want our emphasis to be on power and strength. And even our VO2 max, I don't know if you've heard, VO2 max is the maximum amount of oxygen our body can take in and turn into energy. And it's another very important measurement of longevity. We want to keep our VO2 max high. So doing cardio exercises that promote power, speed, and VO2 max are going to become really important as we get older. The longer, slower endurance, like zone 2 cardio, or going for a longer jog or walk or bike ride, are less beneficial as we get older. It doesn't mean they're bad per se. It's still movement and exercise, which is great, but it's not the priority. I would say that's the last priority. The 2 priorities that are above that are the strength components and the power VO2 max sprint components. So you have your strength training and your higher intensity cardiovascular training, and those need to be the priorities. And if you have those fit into your week, and you want to do, and you enjoy the longer cardio, then that's a great addition to your program. But it definitely shouldn't be the primary emphasis of your program as we age. Because in reality, women are naturally endurant. Endurance comes more easily to women than to men. Strength comes more easily to men than to women. So we want to work in the areas that we're not as naturally good in to build that balance. So there's a lot of research that says zone 2 is really important. Well, that research was mostly done on men. And it is true that that's something that they need more in to help with their metabolic system and cardio health for men. And we need to work more on sprint intervals. So what does that mean in reality? It means instead of doing a 30-minute, brisk walk or jog that's sort of the same pace the whole time, and you're breathing harder than you normally would, but it's not, you can still continue to go. You want to do shorter exercises that are higher intensity, like a burst for 20 or 30 seconds, maybe on a Peloton bike, or maybe it's on, elliptical, maybe it's on a treadmill, something where you're pushing yourself, where your breathing gets really expanded and you're getting really out of breath. And it's definitely not something you could keep doing for a long period of time. So you get to a point where you get fatigued, and then you recover, and then you do that again. And the point is you're trying to hit a high intensity of both power and cardiovascular demand. So it both helps our cardiovascular demand by increasing VO2 max, and also works our kind of speed and power, which is important for women. The good news is the high intensity interval training. And if that's intimidating to you, by the way, you can just start. It doesn't mean you have to start 100%, right? You can just start playing with increasing the intensity a little bit more than you normally would, and then recovering, and then just getting used to that little more effort. But the good news is it's actually less time. Instead of having to do long, 45-minute workouts, you can do them in 15 minutes and still get as much and actually more benefit. It's not as much about counting the calories during the exercise. So I know a lot of us, with our Apple Watches, or like, how many calories have I burned so far in my cardio workout? But if you're doing a high intensity cardio workout, you're burning calories way beyond when you're done with your workout. And it's improving your overall metabolism because you're building strength, you're building human growth hormone. And so 24 hours a day, you're burning more calories. And that's really the key to long-term weight management and body composition. Then how many calories can I burn in my 30, 45-minute workout? That's somewhat irrelevant to the big picture. We want to do things that are boosting our metabolism. So kind of on that same vein, what exercises to avoid during and after menopause? It's not to avoid because they're going to be bad, they're going to be damaging to you. But again, excessive long cardio or lightweight strength training. Those aren't bad, but they're not pushing you towards your goal of maintaining and building muscle mass and increasing metabolism and increasing human growth hormone. They're just not going to be helping with that. So it's kind of like just not very efficient or not very good bang for your buck in terms of time. So again, if you're someone who loves hiking or long bike rides, I'm not saying don't do that, but I'm saying make sure you're fitting in the parts that really are going to help our long-term health and our longevity and staying durable and staying strong as we age. One comment just on walking. I hear a lot of people talk about, oh, I walk for exercise. Walking's great, right? It's movement. We want to do as much as we can to get up from behind the computer, right? We just have sedentary lives these days. It's just the way it is. And it's impossible to avoid. So getting out and walking, getting out and gardening, getting out and doing kind of movement is very healthy. But walking is not what the definition of exercise is. The definition of exercise is a amount of effort that's maintaining or improving your strength or your cardiovascular fitness. So unless you're very deconditioned, for some people who are very deconditioned or older or a real beginner, walking might be exercise. But for most people, walking is movement, but it's not exercise. It's not building our VO2. It's not creating muscle mass. So I would encourage you to think, to work on adding some intensity. If walking is your main thing right now, it's great. You're moving and that's good. But if you want to improve your health, you've got to increase the intensity of that. So whether that's making sure there's hills in your walk or walking really brisk and for a while and taking a break, or maybe even turn it into a light jog if you're able, if your body is able to handle running. You can add BFR bands on your body when you're walking, and that will increase the metabolic effect of walking. So that's one way that I love to help people who walking is something they love to do, and it's what they want in their exercise routine, is add BFR bands on so it becomes an exercise versus just movement. And then to wrap up, the last question, then I have a couple final comments and then we'll go to questions. But the safest and most efficient way, and the scientifically proven, this has been proven through many, many studies, this is the safest, most efficient way to gain strength. And I think this is particularly ideal for the 45 plus woman who maybe hasn't had a lot of experience in lifting, is using BFR, blood flow restriction training. I think most of you know what that is by now, but just to briefly touch on it, you're wearing bands on your arms and or your legs that's slowing down your venous blood, which just makes your muscles fatigue much quicker. It makes lactic acid build in the muscle, and it puts your muscle into hypoxia. All those things signal to your brain that you're working really, really hard, even though you aren't working, you're working at a 6 instead of a 10, but your body is responding, your brain is responding as if you're working in a 10. So you're not having to put your body through the same amount of stress and intensity, but you're getting all the benefits in both muscle growth, vascular health. It helps decrease blood pressure. It helps increase blood flow to the brain. You're building type 2 muscle fibers, which, as I said earlier, are the ones we really, really, really want to hang on to and build as we get older, because those are the ones that are so easy to lose as we get older. And you can do it all without overloading joints and tissue. We're just switching from a mechanical technique to a metabolic technique. And what we've found out through science over the last 50 years is that the metabolic technique is faster, it's less stress on our body, it's more efficient, and we're going to get better results from that. I've worked with probably a couple hundred women now with BFR, and the two types of women that I really find are ideal, especially as BFR is still considered a little bit fringe, it's not mainstream yet, although I think it will be in the near future. Anyone who's been an athlete who has experienced lifting in the past, but they've noticed as they've gotten older, they can't maintain lifting heavy. This is me. I had a hip replacement. I could no longer lift heavy without my body really hurting afterwards. And so I had a choice. I could keep lifting heavy and kind of pay for it and know that it was it was hurting me, but I was trying to maintain my strength. Or I could go lighter and know that I'm getting weaker. Neither one of those options felt great to me. So BFR became this new option. Whoa, I can go light and still get the benefits of going heavy. The other person that I think is a really good fit is the cardio lover out there. Someone who's been fit and active most of their life, but they've leaned into cardio, which is fine. You're a runner, you're a cyclist. You don't necessarily love being in the gym. You like being outside, or you're intimidated by weights. You don't want to get hurt. You're not really sure exactly what to do. BFR is a great solution because you can do it at home. You're using light weights. The workouts are short, but you're going to get that muscle benefit that your cardio is not giving you. And you really, as we get older, need to have the combination of both. If you're curious to learn more about BFR, I didn't want it to be all about BFR, but because the science is so clear and my experience is so clear, it's hard for me to not talk about BFR in this topic because it's very relevant to women. If you want to learn more about that, I did another webinar that was exclusively on that. I'll send it in a follow-up email. But otherwise, the takeaways from today: think about muscle as your friend and our longevity buddy as we go through life, and try to prioritize workouts that will focus on muscles. So some strength training, some farmer's carry, some hypertrophy, focusing a little bit more on high intensity cardio exercises. So if you're new to that, just play with whatever you normally do, make it a little bit more effort and play with building on that effort, but then you get to recover. You don't have to sustain that hard effort. You're just pushing. It could be, if you normally walk, try to jog for a minute and then go back to walking for a minute, or go brisk walk for a minute, walking for a minute. Just increase that intensity. Really just, there's so much talk out there now about menopause, which I think is awesome. It's so great that there's, the government's talking about women's health. There's more focus coming here. But along with that, a lot of what people talk about is all the negatives that come with menopause. We lose our estrogen, our bone density, and it can be daunting and overwhelming. But what I want to say is, like, we're in a great time of history, is that we are in a great time where the medicine is changing rapidly and there's so much support. I encourage you to explore HRT with your doctor if you haven't already. And as a matter of fact, next month, I'm doing a webinar on HRT with a local doctor, Dr. Yumi Ando, who specializes in that. So you can learn all about pros, cons, who's it's right for, who's it's not, what are the real risks. A lot of the risks that were talked about in the past was misinformation based on a study that was misinterpreted, basically. But so that's something that's great out there. There's so much more knowledge on nutrition, supplementation, sleep, that really help our health. So just being educated and finding support. And then lastly, with strength training and with BFR being new to the scene, it is, to me, literally a game changer for our longevity, and it's something that I plan to do forever for my I have a hip replacement, and I know I want to be healthy as long as possible. And so there are solutions out there, and I feel like it's a great time to be it's a great time for our health. So try to focus on be solution oriented and what we can do for ourselves, and not get caught in the fray. But really, it's great that we all have support and we can talk about these things, and finding good solutions and sharing solutions that work for each other, I think, is great. I see a lot more community around that now, and that's amazing. So I'm going to shift gears to questions. I have one in the chat. Is, what's the best way to measure VO2 max levels while exercising? One thing, if you're interested in VO2, one thing I would encourage anyone to do is get an actual VO2 test. There's estimators that you can get online, but they're really not accurate. You you need to do a test. And there's a lot of, you can just Google VO2 test. DexaFit is a one it's a chain that's growing, but if there's not a DexaFit near you, but it will measure your actual level of VO2, what your VO2 max is, and then it will give you percentages of your heart rate of what zones you're in. So then if you want to do VO2 max training, you'll know exactly what your heart rate should be to be benefiting from that. If you don't have that test, or that doesn't sound like something you want to pursue, then you just want to focus on perceived exertion, right? A scale of 1 to 10, you want to be in a 7, 8 when you're doing your cardio. But again, you don't have to maintain that. That's just for a minute, 2 minutes, and then recover and then repeat. But just challenge yourself to get in the VO2. There's no real way to measure your VO2 while exercising. It's more perceived exertion, or if you have the numbers from doing a VO2 test, it can tell you where you need to be during exercise. So good question, Sylvia. Did that answer your question, Sylvia?
Yeah, I had heard on some other podcasts that there is like a watch that can measure the VO2, but I just wasn't sure if you've tried it or heard of
Well,
it.
I've heard that, and I think from what I've heard, it's not very accurate, but I'm not 100% sure. So I would maybe check on it, or if you want us to meet a link or something about it, I can do a little research and see what I find. Because even if it's not 100% accurate, if it gives us good data, that would still be okay. It's just, I'm not, in the past, I've heard that there's not another good way to measure VO2, but I'm sure with technology, that's going to change eventually.
Yeah, and what about like the is it HR or is it there's another band that you can wear is it I don't know if it's I don't know what it is, but it's a band. It's like a polar band that you can wear to see like where your heart rate is.
Yeah, the polar heart rate monitor you wear across your chest is the most accurate one, but there probably are other, like the Whoop band, and maybe there are some, I think the
I've
Apple.
tried the Whoop band.
What's that?
The Whoop band is too complicated for me.
Is it? I haven't actually used it, so that's good feedback. But yeah, Polar Monitor is it's been around forever. It's a heart rate monitor that you can, so if you know what your VO2, if you get your VO2 test and they send your heart rate zones, you can just wear that monitor and know exactly what your heart rate is. So if you're a data person and if having goals and numbers helps you, with a lot of people are, that can be a great tool. If you're not so much, then I would go in perceived exertion. And that just means how hard you perceive your exertion. Is 10 is like as hard as you can go. You want to get to a 7 and 8. A 5 would be something like, a brisk walk that you could continue to do for a long period of time. So that's the way if you don't go with the VO2 route. But technology is changing rapidly, and there's more and more of these health technologies that are going to be helpful. Yeah, Sylvia.
Yeah, one other thing, which because I'm 15 years into menopause, so I'm ahead of where you are probably. But one of the hardest things for me in exercising has not been my motivation. It's been my recovery the next day or two, because it exhausts me, it wipes me out, and it also makes me really stiff. So if you have any, like right now I'm sitting on an infrared, an infra zen mat, which is it has the both PEMF and infrared technology. So it's a heat mat, which actually helps me a lot. And I joined a place where I could do ice baths. But I'm just wondering if there's any other tips that you have to like help us decrease the inflammation after the day afters, because that's really what prevents me from doing a lot more exercise.
Great question. And what is the day after? What is it? Strength training or cardio, or either?
The day after anything, even like a long hike or a long walk, like I'm just stiff, really stiff. I feel like I've been hit by a bus.
Yeah. That's a great question. And I'm glad you brought that up. So heat is great. So any kind of heat mat like you're talking about, or if you have access to a sauna, any kind of rolling, mobility, stretching, yoga, is good, just because you want to get, so heat helps because you're getting blood flow. Mobility helps with moving the tissue, right? One thing was, BFR for strength training and for shorter cardio training, because you're going lighter weight, you need a lot less recovery. Now, that's not going to necessarily help with your hiking and long activities like that. That's probably just like duration of impact that kind of stiffens. Our joints aren't as padded, we don't have as much cartilage as we used to, so there can be a little bit of stiffening of protection when we do a longer, whether it's a run or a hike or something where so that depends on your body, and I would just listen to that and maybe play with, can you figure out an amount that's not going to set you back? But for strength training, BFR, and then recovery, heat, mobility, and the other one is compression. I mean, the problem is all this stuff you need tools. But compression sleeves are good for recovery. Anything that's going to stimulate blood flow.
Okay. So just heat.
So
I wasn't sure if heat or cold better.
cold is better, like maybe the day of or right after, or if you have it available, you can use heat and cold, and that can be great because it's getting, vasoconstriction and then vasodilation. So you're getting this kind of pump. The other thing I do is like doing just really gentle light cardio, like a 10 minutes on the bike, just because that's going to elevate your blood flow. Like something that's gentle on your body. It's not going to continue to cause it to be inflamed, but you are promoting that blood flow.
I have one of the vibration plates, so I love using that.
Yeah, that's great because that also will help with that as well. All right, switching gears, we have few more questions. So would playing ice hockey, woo, someone's in ice hockey, I love it. Be similar to HIIT training on ice, targeted 40 minutes. Yeah, I mean, it's all in how it feels, right? I've never played ice hockey, but I would imagine it's pretty intense, right? So if you feel like your heart rate is getting elevated in that 45 seconds to a minute, then that absolutely is HIIT. It's not so much about the time as it is the effort, right? So you want to feel like it's an effort. I'm out of breath. My heart's beating hard.
Yeah, then it depends on the shift. Like
It depends on the shift.
well, like you go out there and you're going to skate. I mean, your whole purpose during that shift is to skate all out.
Right.
But it depends on what's happening. Sometimes you're chasing somebody down, so you're doing a end-to-end sprint. Other times you're just like digging in and fighting and trying to get the puck away from the net.
Yeah.
Or the net, depending on
if you're playing a whole game and rotating in, that sounds like great high intensity exercise to me.
Okay.
That's very cool. Good job, Helen. All right, Lonnie had a question. This is a good one on can I elaborate more on the farmer carry? Yeah, let me grab some weights and I'll give you a quick demo. So the only challenge with farmers carries from a like practical standpoint is you need heavier dumbbells. The nice thing with the BFR that we do is your dumbbells stay light, so you only need 5 and 10 pound dumbbells. But if you're going to do a true farmer carry that you want without BFR and you want bone density and grip benefits, you need heavy dumbbells. So that would either mean going to a gym or investing in heavier dumbbells. But literally all you do is get whatever heavy dumbbells you can carry, grip it nice and strong with your hands, and you just want as good a posture as you can get. So chin back, shoulders back, and you're just trying to walk with that posture. Okay, it's great for posture because we have a load. If we tend to be forward in our postural, you're going to feel it more. So you're going to be able to feel, oh, I need to stand up tall. And then by standing tall against a load, not only are you helping the bone density because of the load on your spine, but you're strengthening all of the little tiny multifidi muscles between your spine, your vertebrae, which actually gives you some elevation between the bones. So less pressure on the discs, more length, and better posture. So that's why it's one of my favorite. Just, it's not building particular muscle groups, like it's not strengthening your quads or your glutes, but it's just really good for spinal health because it's helping bone and all those little muscles to create a strong and upright spine for posture.
And how far are you walking? I might have confused what that was. I thought you meant like when you go on a walk, get some dumbbells. You're saying
Yeah,
this is like a gym.
So this is a strength training that you would do, on a strength training, not necessarily with a long walk, which is
Okay.
cardio. So you would just do it for, 30 seconds or a minute until you get fatigue and you want to just increase how much you go. If you're talking about walking, the two things I would do there, I would put BFR bands on potentially.
Thank you. That was my second question. So I actually am a runner
Okay.
I was an athlete until my 20s, like through college, and the only thing I've been able to find that I keep doing is running. And I
Yep.
need to get something like you're saying in there that's a little bit more like I'm noticing my muscle mass is going. And I think it's just because all I do is cardio. So I was trying to understand if that walking with the dumbbells would help to work that in there, but maybe it's the BFR. How many days a week would I need to incorporate BFR if I wanted to keep running? Because it's also my mental health.
For sure. No, I think running is great because it's great for cardio and bone density and all that stuff. I recommend 3 days a week with BFR of about 15 to 20 minutes.
Okay, I'll figure that out. I'll watch your other webinar and
Okay, great.
thank you.
Yeah, sure. And yeah, Cheryl had a great tip. She's a massage therapist for the pain after exercise, Sylvia. Some good points. Water before and after exercise, so make sure you're hydrated. That's super important. And stretching, which we briefly talked about, but she's stretching immediately after the exercise so that you get some length before you settle into that tightness. So those are two great tips there. So thank you, Cheryl. Let's see. No, so Sylvia, about the BFR bands. Yeah, when you have BFR bands, there's a recommended pressure that comes with the bands. I do a program that will teach you that, but even if you don't do that, they'll say there's instructions with the bands that will tell you the tightness. And you really only want them on for 20 minutes max. They're not meant to be a long workout. The whole point is you get to fatigue much faster, but you're getting the same signals to the brain as a 45-minute to an hour workout, but you're only doing 20 minutes. So 20 minutes is the max for BFR, and the tightness, it will tell you how to do that. I know, Sylvia, you're gonna do my program, so we'll go through all those details in there. Priscilla, do you use BFR bands while walking, running? Yeah, both. You can use it while walking or running and or lifting weights. So you can use it. Basically, you can use BFR with you can swim with them. You can do it with anything you do, and it will just ramp up the amplitude and will ramp up your body's metabolic response to the exercise that you're doing. So I feel it's just a great way to get more bang for your buck when you're doing your activity. Oh, good. Helen sharing the SF Bay Area women's ice hockey. No experience to give hockey a try. How would you even, I'm impressed. I don't even know how to skate, so I don't think that's for me. But for any of you interested in trying hockey, Helen is saying it's a good exercise and it's a fun community.
Great community, and literally you don't need to know how to skate. On Give Hockey a Try Day, they'll pull people aside and teach people how to skate.
How long have you been doing that for, Helen?
I started in the mid-90s.
Nice. Good.
But I started as an adult.
Yeah, good for you. That's cool. Well, her info's in the chat if anyone wants to write that down. Stephanie, I have sciatic issues in my spine and a couple vertebrae disc narrowing issues, so I'm worried about the farmer care would hurt my spine. Okay, that's a great question. So in that case, I would start conservatively and start light and gradually build up, but it actually can help relieve pressure on that nerve as you get that spine, those little muscles stronger. So there's a term called tensegrity, which just means if you have more tension, if muscles are stronger, they will offload pressure on joints. So if your quad in your leg is stronger, you will have less pressure on your knee joint. If the muscles in your spine are stronger, you have less pressure on your discs. So obviously, if you just first time went as heavy as you could go and your muscles weren't prepared for it, then yes, that might put more pressure on your spine and might not feel good. But if you gradually ease into that and the whole goal would be to get those vertebrae muscles stronger so that there's more support around your discs and your spine, and there's not this heavy pressure, which as we get older and we get weaker, not only do we get thinning of the disc because our tissues get thinner, but there's usually more weight because we're not as strong. So farmer carry, I would just ease into it. That would be a great one. Good question. Any other questions, comments? You can put in the chat or feel free to just unmute yourself. I hope that was helpful. Did people get some good nuggets out of that? interested in doing more education in this area. So curious what, you know, if you have any feedback, feel free to shoot me a note, or if you have any other individual questions, I'm also happy to connect. Thank you, Nancy. Nancy is one of my BFR students and has had some life-changing results in a short amount of time, which is pretty cool. It's partly why I'm loving that program so much. Theragun. Oh, I didn't think about that. Yeah, Theragun for sore muscles. That's another tip someone gave. Those are the compression devices that vibrate on the muscle and help to stimulate blood flow and break up tissue. So that's a good suggestion. All right, well, I will wrap it up there. Sounds like most of the questions are answered. If I will be sending a follow-up email with a link to this recording, a link to my BFR recording, and also you'll just have my email. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Happy to be a resource or supportive for anyone out there that's venturing on their longevity journey and wanting to add more either strength or high intensity into their life. If that's newer for you and you need some support, let me know. But thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks,
All right,
Ashley.
Priscilla, shoot me an email and we'll connect on the BFR. That would be great.
Thanks, Sally.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Cheryl. Thanks, Mom.
Cheers.
Bye, Helen. Thanks for the input, Cheryl. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Bye.